Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today we're going to talk about some of the little intricacies in the sport that can make a difference. And more specifically, it's going to be some terminal tackle. I often feel like all of the attention goes to the baits and the lures because the idea is that's what attracts the fish. But in my opinion, if you don't have the right terminal tackle, oftentimes you don't get the peak performance out of the bait, or you have bait failure. And it's really important to have the right terminal tackle, whether that's hooks, weights, swivels, you name it, any of the small little parts that go into making your baits work properly are considered terminal tackle. They're very specific pieces a lot of the times, but there are a lot that are also very multi-purpose, and they can be used for a lot of different techniques, a lot of different baits, and a lot of times that comes up to the angler to figure out how to apply the piece of terminal tackle, meaning there are a lot of very specific pieces of terminal tackle that were made for a specific technique. But if you think outside the box, most of the time you can apply them to a lot of different baits, a lot of different patterns, a lot of different techniques, and therefore it becomes a much more versatile piece of terminal tackle. So I've got here 5 pieces of terminal tackle that I really love. I use them on a daily basis, and I have found them to be about the best you can get in that specific piece of terminal tackle. So we're going to go through all of these. The first one here that I want to talk about, and I talk about bobber stops a lot. I am a big fan of pegging my Texas rigs, but I also feel like it's extremely critical to make sure that you have with you a bunch of bobber stops. The ones that I prefer the most are these right here. These are the Decoy Texas Lock. They, to me, are some of the best for a couple of reasons. One, they hold extremely well, so they're tight on your line, but I really like that bullet shape, which I think comes through the water a lot better. It fits up snug to your baits, it fits up snug to your weights a lot better than some of the circle shaped ones or the oval shaped ones. They just seem to perform the best for me. And we know how important bobber stops are, whether it's from actually fishing a Texas rig and holding your weight in place, whether it's for certain variations of drop shots. You can use it for like a small split shot rig. You can use it to protect your knots. There are tons and tons of different reasons why a bobber stop is very important. I've done lots of videos. I'll attach a video at the end so you can see like my top uses for bobber stops. But the Texas Lock by Decoy is one of my favorites. I've never had any issue with them. And in fact, I've also done videos about how to be able to reuse bobber stops. They're one of the easiest ones to be able to reuse, meaning they hold up better and they're easy to thread onto the needle, which is what I use to reuse a bobber stop. Next up, we're going to switch over to swivels. A swivel is such a critical piece of equipment for me because it decreases the amount of line twist and a lot of the techniques and a lot of the baits that I like to use. So the ones that I almost spilled the whole bag. The ones that I really like to use are these Spro power swivels, but specifically the reason I like this is because they have a size 10. I'm going to try to show it to you. It's it right here. That's the size 10. And the size 10 is a 1/4 inch long. So, I mean, we're talking absolutely minuscule. They're almost a pain in the butt to deal with because they're hard to tie, they're hard to hold on. But the key here is they're so small that you can use them as a lot of different line connection points. You can actually cast them through your guides if you wanted to. Now, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not saying you should do that, but you can reel this up through the guides, which does make storing some different setups on your rods a little bit easier. So I'll use them for drop shots. I'll use them for flukes. I'll use them for double fluke rigs. I use them in a lot of different circumstances where I know I might be getting line twists. They work excellent. They're tiny. They just hold up well. I have never had one fail. And they're so small, but yet they're rated for up to 35-pound test. So it's got a lot of power. In my case, I'm never using a swivel with anything that's like probably over 17-pound test. So I've never had one fail. Doesn't mean you won't have it happen, but I love these things, and I think they are extremely important to having in your boat because there are times you just need to throw a swivel on your bait. They also work great too if you're looking at connecting like a blade bait or something along those lines to a snap, and you just want to keep your snap swivel combination really small. Next up, we're going to talk about one. I'm not sure if I've talked about these on the channel. I think I have. This is called a hollow point. And you can see I sliced my hand this morning with a box cutter, just being dumb. But this is a hollow point by Gambler. It's a plastic bullet-shaped cone head that's got a corkscrew in it. Now, Gambler produces these to be used with your toad-style baits. Anything that your horny toads, your whatever toad style bait you like. But the idea here being that that hollow point doesn't really add any weight. You can screw it into your bait, and what it does is it allows you to bring your bait through slop and through grass a lot better without catching. Plus, it then holds your bait up on the hook, which then allows it to stay in much better position so that when a fish does bite, you can get the hook set driven home versus your bait sliding through. We all know if you're fishing a lot of grass, if you're trying to bring a toad over the top of slop, if it's not a fresh toad, you've caught maybe a fish or two on it, a lot of times that bait slides down, that cast is ruined. These hold your bait up in that position. Now, the key here for me is I don't just use these for frogs. They're promoted to be used with toad style baits, but I really like them for a lot of different techniques because of what I just said. They help keep my bait in position, they lock into the bait. Even though they're plastic, they do add just a tiny bit of weight. So I'll use it on a Texas rig stick bait. I'll throw them on a fluke sometime. If I'm fishing any sort of plastic bait around grass and I want to just make it a little bit more streamlined, I can do it. I love it for fishing any sort of boot tail swimmer where I'm just rigging it on an EWG style hook and just casting that over the top of grass or through some shallow grass. That's a great way to keep your bait in position, and it's a great way to allow it to come through the grass clean. Like if you're fishing a lake that's got a lot of that slime, that black filament or slime that kind of starts growing on dying weed, your bait comes through so much better with a hollow point than it will if you just leave the bait regularly Texas rigged. So I love those things. I think I've talked about them on the channel. I've probably talked about all these on the channel at some point. Next up is another simple way to add a lot of weight. This is my favorite nail weight out there, and it's different than most other nail weights. So what I love about this, and this is the G7 Gambit. It's just their screw sinker, I guess is what they call it. Now these are expensive in terms of nail weights, but what I love about these is it's got that screw corkscrew actual, I don't know what you even call it. It's got the screw, molded in screw in it, so you can screw it right into your baits. The reason I love this is because that holds better than any other nail weight I've ever used. And at the same time, what I really like about it is it screws up to the point where you get that little nub sticking out, which I generally like to have so that when I'm fishing, say, a Nako rig on the bottom, it gives you a little clinking noise versus it being buried completely in the worm. So, if that's going around rock, you can hear it just clicking on the bottom. It draws a little bit of attention to it. And these just hold up the best. Now, generally speaking, if I'm fishing a Nako rig or adding a little bit of weight and I'm just out fun fishing, I generally will just use some other form of nail weight. But come tournament time, oop, I dropped it. These are the ones that I'm throwing. The G7 Gambit screw sinker. This is the 3/64 ounce size. That's my favorite size, but just a really good nail weight for those of you that like to add a little bit of weight to your baits. You can also, a lot of times what I'll do too is I'll screw these into the belly of like a swim bait to give it more of that neutral weight, but I add a little bit of weight to it and it screws right up into the bait where it doesn't have any conflict at all with creating issues with the bait action. All right, last up is the owner flashy accent. So you can buy a kit or a pre-made package where you get a bunch of these flashy accents. Now we all know how good like the flashy swimmer is. The flashy accent really is just a way to add a blade onto basically any bait. You know, it comes with a little bit of a plastic tubing over the eye of the swivel. You just hook that through your hook, and that keeps it right in place. So you can use it on almost any bait out there, whether it's a plastic Texas rig, a swim jig, a spinner bait. You can just add a little bit of flash to whatever it is that you want. Give your bait a little bit of a different appearance. So maybe you're fishing dirtier water. Maybe you went from a sunny day to an overcast day and you just want to add a little bit of flash. Maybe the fish are keying in on really small shad. This is a really easy, simple way to take a piece of terminal tackle and change your bait up a little bit. It's pretty crazy. I've had a lot of days where you're getting a few bites and then you put on one of those little blades like this flashy accent, and it's like all of a sudden it's a game changer for the day. You just get a ton more bites. So these are 5 different pieces of terminal tackle equipment that I love. I absolutely have in my boat at all times. Let me know in the comment section what pieces of terminal tackle you guys love to have in the boat, so that the rest of us can learn from you guys as well. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like this, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned. We'll have more of these coming out soon.